All right, there's one person already out there, man. Oh man, this hat might have to go. But anyway, what's going on, guys? One of the books that I've talked about a lot on this channel over the years has been James Robinson's Starman. And I made some videos a couple years ago where I just kind of went through the whole series, showing the cover. Nothing. It was a two-parter. It wasn't anything big. But what's happened is over those years, people have picked up Starman. And apparently, with Ollie's having like four of the omnibus trades there, there's only three here. I got one in the closet. More people have picked it up, and I've actually been asked by two different people why have I not made just a video or a series of videos about it and stuff, right? And honestly, this could have been anything. This could have been a TV show. This could have been a movie. This could have been a series of novels. It just happened to be comics and all that stuff that I ran across. But it's one of those books where Jack Knight, the Starman in this series, is so close to what I was as a young man that I always had this little hesitation. Hey, what's up, Tim Merritt? What's going on? Just talking a little Starman. But Jack Knight, it's one of those things where I had to be real careful because I think if I went into what was going on with Starman and this stuff, I feel like I was giving you TMI. You know what I mean? I feel like I would end up using like the camera as a counselor or something, or I would go into too much of my personal stuff because there's times I had to set the book down. Yeah. Starman's great, Tim. And my friends over the years, when they would read it and stuff, if they knew me in the 80s and 90s, even into the early 2000s and stuff, they were like, oh my God, this is you, reading this book. The guy even kind of had the same hairstyles and stuff in there and goatee. And it was really odd, some of the guy's interest. And that's so we'll go ahead and talk about it real quick. But first thing first, the first time I ever really sort of had an interest in Starman before, this is probably like 10 years before, what is this, 1985 or something, was with this issue of All Star Squadron. This was a two-parter, I think, number 41. And we were talking, Roy Thomas finally got around to the part where he started giving the origin of Starman and stuff. Now, right off the bat, I saw this costume and knew it was like, yeah, that's from the 40s, bright red and green and all this stuff. And I read it and I felt like this was, inspired by Bruce Wayne, millionaire playboy, decides to be a hero and all this stuff. But as I read it and stuff, there was something different there. Hey, what's up, Doctor Silver Age? We're just talking a little Starman today, and I might make a better video down the line where I actually record it, maybe put in some editing. I don't know, but anyway, but even when I was like about 11 or 12 reading this, man, I could tell there was something untapped there because basically he has a cosmic rod, whatever he calls it, and it's such simple, I guess, fantasy there where like he gets his powers from the stars. He's made a rod that pulls power down from the stars and he can fly and do all this stuff and everything like that. And he was like a scientist and stuff, but just that one little aspect of it being about the stars gave him sort of a atmosphere all of his own, and I was sort of like always felt like this was an untouched character, there's a lot of untapped potential. Then you go ahead and I ended up getting this while I was finishing up basic training and had a weekend before my AIT started. Because we were coming out of the 80s where a lot of things were kind of getting grim and gritty and they were giving heroes lead feet and, they were trying to get them a little bit more realistic and everything like that. And we ended up having this guy named James Robinson come on into comics with a prestige format miniseries called The Golden Age. I don't know if you can see these, but yeah, he kind of took what I consider All Star Squadron and stuff, and those great characters from the '40s, and wrote this freaking fantastic story of these guys after World War II. Oh yeah, man! And what he did with Manhunter, I always liked Manhunter because Kirby touched him there more or less, But what he did in this, what James Robinson did with the Manhunter was just fantastic. So that was the character that really got me in this. But the other thing was is what he did with the original Starman. The original Starman in this is an Elseworld Tales. This wasn't supposed to be in continuity, but he would end up using it and play with it and stuff. Is that the fact that the original Starman went nuts, ended up in a sanitarium because he was part of the project where he ended up meeting and working with Einstein and stuff, and they developed the atomic bomb. James Robinson is a very nice guy. I hung out with him a bit like a year ago. Oh man, Tim, that's awesome, man. I follow him on Twitter and I think it used to be Facebook or something. And I think we had like a small exchange, but very cool, man. I would have sent you some stuff to try to get him to sign it. So, but he seems like a really nice guy. He put a on Twitter. He put a picture of his bookshelves in some room, I guess, where he works and stuff like that. It was killing me because I couldn't tell what everything was. But anyway, coming off the golden age and stuff, but he had it to where Starman sort of went nuts after they used the atomic bomb to use World War II because he helped develop it. And that was one of the things I liked because, I was starting to get older and you always kind of wondered why didn't, these great scientists that had all these great discoveries and stuff, why weren't they really using them for mankind? Like with Iron Man, why wasn't he like making robotic prosthetics for people? Why wasn't Reed Richards having machines go out where you can make chocolate chip cookies in 6 seconds or something? And that's a real thing in a Fantastic Four comic book. Why weren't all these heroes using their stuff? Rebel Comics. Finally, I get to see the legendary G1 Howler Mouse. I don't know about legendary, maybe infamous. But anyway, so James Robinson's already like had the groundwork for all this stuff, and it was going back to like characters I had. Hey, what's up, man? God, people are pouring in. Hey, what's up, man? Not much, man. All right, glad to see you. I'll tell you what, I've looked over the weekend at my feed a little bit on YouTube, man, and a lot of people are not getting a lot of views. And the live show I did yesterday really hasn't, done about half of what it usually does. So I figured everybody was getting their tax returns and probably maybe had some good weather where you're at and everybody was out. So seeing all everybody popping up is awesome. And then over the years, one of the things that happened in between that was the Starman came out, and I was a Roger Stern fan from his Avengers work. Hey, Carlos, what's up? The original Starman was created by Jack Burnley, who was the first artist outside the Schuster studio to draw Superman. I can see the influence. That's awesome. And Paulo's here. What's up, Paulo? Man, everybody's popping in. But I was a Roger Stern fan. Had seen him come to DC and get a hold of Superman a little bit, and I think he did the Atom, and he came in there, and I don't know. I don't know. A lot of stuff I can't tell. They didn't last very long with what he worked on. But Roger Stern, I heard a couple years ago, he was huge, like in Sweden or something, because he's writing the Phantom out there. Yeah, come on in, Eric. No problem. Always got room for one more. We'll just we won't get pizza. Everybody gets smaller pieces, you know. So yeah, having Roger Stern come to the DC was one of those little things for me that was just awesome. And we get a new Starman. And before that, there was a Starman in the '70s, which I'm telling you, man, if you made a Starman in the '70s, you might as well have just admitted you listened to David Bowie, Iggy Stardust, and all that stuff. I remember that Starman. He became big during the invasion storyline. Yeah, yeah. So he had like a little one shot and stuff, and his race actually came down here to invade us, and he turned against them to save us, and he had an amulet that he got his power on, and he was blue and everything. Anyway, James Robinson ended up using all of that and even more, and he came in there and came with this legacy. We had Zero Hour come out. Zero Hour was supposed to be a unofficial um, off. Oh man, yeah, 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 yeah. It was a continuation of Crisis on Infinite Earths because they're saying they fixed space, but they never fixed time. So there's a crisis in time and everything like that. And we got our first appearance of Jack Knight Starman arguing with his dad and his brother David and stuff, right? And we get the story of the reluctant hero. I had my Zero issue signed by Tony Harris, so I got it put up. I didn't get it out, but there was a Zero issue that finally came out, then number one and stuff. And the first couple issues were actually on newsstand and easy to get, and these things stood out on the rack. I mean, this is in the days. This is 94, and this is a time and an era where Image was big, so everybody wanted the big, bold McFarlane, Silvestri, Eric Larson, Rob Liefeld. That kind of art was getting everything. Then you come in here and you got this guy doing painted covers and stuff, very gothic, things like that. So yeah, these stood out, and the first 0 to number 6, I think, like that. These are showing up. You had the Shade come in. I knew all these characters because I was an Earth 2 fan and read all the backups and Adventure Comics when I was a kid, and any kind of reprints they did. And then we had Roy Thomas come on and do his All Star Squadron. And right here, it was this issue. One of the things, this is what I'm trying to talk about, where like I don't want to get out there, puts myself out there too much, man. But this is what I looked like a lot, when I was younger and stuff, when I had the hair and all this stuff, right? This is what I'm saying, man, and that scowl and stuff, man. because like in school I felt like I was a ghost. You know what I mean? I tried to kind of be a ghost looking back on it. I just wasn't into the drama. I never knew what I was going home to at night. And on the weekend I had responsibilities, and on the weekends when I was like free, you know what I mean? So I had this thing where I was a very angry alpha male. Yeah, Golden Age was considered Elseworlds, but Robinson used elements from his Starman stories. Yeah, I said that a little while ago and stuff. So you're right on it, Paulo. Yeah. So when I would go out, I'd like to have like see my friends. You know what I mean? Like I had a small circle of friends, and I expected a loyalty out of them that I would give them. You know what I mean? And just real angry a whole lot. You know, things kind of got out of whack and stuff, right? So when I saw this issue, I was just sort of like taken back and couldn't figure out why. This was a very cool and uncomfortable cover for me. And then I found a picture of me when I was about yeah, I found a picture and I was like, oh my god, I had a mullet and all this stuff. So this was like me in my early 20s and stuff. It was really wild. So the first couple issues take place really quick in one night, because what happens is Jack Knight, we get into the fathers and sons part of it, right? Starman, the original Starman, is his father. He had a brother named David, and their mother had died, and his mother was more of an artist and stuff, like the exact opposite. He ended up making James Robinson ended up having the original Starman be atheist, and that was very taboo back then, you know, to admit that. And Jack Knight was like the complete opposite. Hey, sleepy readers in here, cool man. I'm just doing a little Starman talk. So we get in here and we have Starman, who kind of grew up to where he was taken after his mom. You find out that as the series progressed, that Starman Jack Knight, man, everybody's coming in here, man. So Starman Jack Knight pops up there, and he never wanted to be the hero. He never wanted to be Starman. And his brother David was more than happy to do it. And the first thing that happens on the first night in Opal City, David is standing there on top of a, I don't know, tower or something. He's getting ready to take off and be all gallant to protect Opal City, and he gets sniped through the star, through the heart, and dies. And all hell breaks loose through the mist. And the original Starman ends up coming to Jack Knight saying, "Can you be Starman?" And he's the reluctant hero. He doesn't want anything to do with it. I always got the feeling he was hurting from his mom dying, and had a real chip on his shoulder about his dad and stuff, right? And that's the magic of it. I can sit here and talk about all the adventures and stuff, but Jack Knight is a living, breathing person. You start finding out that he's been into alternative music. He respects things that are older, like actually from his father's era. He has an antique shop that gets blown up, and part of the series is him going around rebuilding his antique shop. He's into Hawaiian shirts and things, old Hawaiian shirts and things like that. So he goes out there and he avenges his brother David, and he ends up killing the Mist son, and who's the burr-haired lady who killed half the Justice League task force during the storyline. I'll talk about that in a minute, Eric. That was the Mist. Her name was Nash. I think if we're talking about the same storyline, there's a one shot here that I'll show you in a minute here. But that's what I mean. All of a sudden, the series became a bit more, because it went away from talking about the great, superhero fights and all these things and things like that. And James Robinson starts talking about how a fight between two characters is almost like sex. A little foreplay, it gets faster, it gets harder, and there's like a climax. But we have an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth here. David died, and then the Mist son died, and his daughter Nash pops up, goes crazy, becomes the new Mist, and she's going to make Jack's life hell. But it's not going to be in the traditional sense of like I'm your arch enemy. She ends up drugging and raping Jack Knight, gets pregnant, and after the baby is born, tells him, "I'm going to raise this kid to hate you." So all of a sudden, we have the guy who has issues with his dad. Now he's in a situation here to where he can't get to his son. He didn't know he had a son, and now he's been told that his son's going to grow up to hate him. And that's what I mean. This is about fathers and sons. That's a theme that go through it. One of the things that James Robinson does to either build on the story or to suck us in, short shades of Morgan Le Fay, it sounds like. Yeah, and James Robinson pulls a lot from classic literature. There's been things where I can feel he pulls from a lot of boy fiction. There's some pirates that pop up, and then there's a ghost pirate that pops in here. He brings in the character of the Shade in here, and we see a whole different idea of the Shade. The Shade reminisces about hanging out with Charles Dickens and Oscar Wilde, and he loves Opal City because he considers that his home. He tries to come off very bourgeois, And he's also very dramatic because he always talks about the night I changed, and it's an evil that was so bad and the story's so bad I can't bear to tell it and stuff like that. So he throws that in there, but there's a James Robinson pulls from a lot of things to create an atmosphere. Now I talked about Opal City, where Starman lives and things like that, and that was one of the magics of this. Tony Harris's art came in with like an Art Deco style, but he could switch styles for another part of the city, and Opal City actually became a character. And I remember reading about this book before it was coming out, and that was one of their things. They wanted the Opal City to be its own character. Now, after reading Opal City and seeing what Tony Harris was doing with it, I think Tony Harris lives or lived in like Atlanta, somewhere in Georgia or something. I can't help but wonder if he made it to Asheville, North Carolina, where they have the Biltmore estates and stuff like that. I've only been to Asheville a few times, but Opal City felt like it should take place in Asheville. It's almost like they took Asheville, this real city, and made it Opal City. I don't know. I mean, it's just what I thought. But that was one of the things. You get in there and you look at Tony Harris's art and stuff, and you get sucked in. And he was only on. I mean, he wasn't. I think he was on really on a third of the book for its entire 80 issue run at the time. Now, one of the things that we have is where David died. Every year, this book gave you the feeling that real time passes, even though they never officially say it. The Pirate Guy had a feature in Action Comics back in the 40s. Robinson was a pretty good at mining stuff in that incredible DC's past. Yeah, and that's what he's done in this. There's a lot. One of the characters, her name was Charity. There's a fortune teller that Jack Knight goes to every now and then for advice. And I don't know if he believes in the occult, but he's very open minded to it, much like an artist is open minded to things. Jack Knight seemed to really take after his mom with his open mindedness, and he had to believe in the supernatural after what I want to tell you about these time past stories. But I think the fortune teller that he went through, her name was Charity, and I'm pretty sure she was a host of one of those weaker, probably something like Dark Mansion or something. She might have been the host for Dark Mansion or something. He pulled a character that nobody else would have remembered of. You're making me hungry to read the run. I only caught bits of it at a time when I visited comic shops on a very random basis. Now, yes, Sleepy. That's why I'm glad I'm doing this live. Now, the first 6 issues that I've just kind of talked about, 0 to 5, and then as time's passed, I actually kind of quit after that for a little while because it was very slow paced. It was one huge big, fight scene. We have Jack arguing with his dad about he's not wanting to be a hero, doesn't want to follow in his footsteps, and he becomes a reluctant hero. He ends up getting his shop blown up and all this stuff like that. I mean, I'm not ruining anything, but it's the story of the reluctant hero, and I ended up picking up on it. Now, the reason I'm telling you that is that this James Robinson was a master. The longer the series goes, the more that he pulls in characters and they get their story, and the more you get to know Jack, and you have to get to know Jack in this, which is easy. Just read the books and pay attention to stuff. The better it gets. This thing actually had a storyline. Uh, I'll show here later where everything came together. The ending and the payoff, you get it. The city of Opal is taken over. It's just it's amazing. That's why I'm saying it starts out with a slow burn and just builds up and builds up and builds up. Now, the idea is that Starman, even though they didn't say it, and this is still part of the DC universe, is that it kind of takes place in real time. Starman gets visited by his dead brother once a year in times past stories. Haller's like watching an issue, a back issue. Every time he talks about a series, you want to go right out and read it. So, well, I mean, get a sample first, cheap, and then decide if you like it. I'm pretty pumped about it. But like I said, this is one of those series that I'm very careful for. Jack is one of those characters that when he came out, I related to so much with. Even my friends that I never said anything to saw it. That different he tells them. Sometimes he gives them an idea of something bad's happening. Sometimes he gives them an idea of something happened in the past. But he always makes Jack. Wasn't Grell's Green Arrow also in real time? Don't know, man. Don't know. I actually didn't read that run. I read his Longbow Hunters. Mike Grell is one of those guys who I love his Warlord. I love this. I love that. But I'd never been an actual Mike Grell fan. You know what I mean? He's one of those guys I just never really clicked with. Oh, thanks, Paulo. Cool, man. But anyway, so every year you get to look forward to seeing David popping up and having these long talks with his brother. And these are the times where you can slow down and see how Jack is changing over the years and stuff, right? Where am I at here? Where am I at? Okay, so around here, yeah, there's the Shade coming into this. What he did with the Shade really blew me away. Shade ended up getting two miniseries, a four-issue miniseries and a 12-issue maxi series. Okay, so then all of a sudden, this is not on the stands anymore, at least where I'm at, even though we got the UPC symbol, but this wasn't on the stands around here, so I ended up having to back up. And all of a sudden, Tony Harris is just blowing it out of the water. Okay, you see that tentacle lady there? We end up at a freak sideshow carnival, if you will, much like the 30s and stuff. And we start seeing Starman. What's amazing about this is that the best way I know how to describe it is I have a complete run and loved it. I don't have it anymore now. I want it back. Well, I love to see Starman books get a home when I find them in dollar boxes. I can't stand seeing a Starman book not have a home. But one of the things that Jack did when he agreed to become Starman that I didn't finish is that he told his father, "You need to take your science, talking about the cosmic energy he pulls from the stars and all this other stuff, and you need to start using, do something for the betterment of mankind." I mean, that's really what he said. He refused to wear the costume because he thinks it looks silly. He refuses to go out on like nightly patrols and stuff like that, and he ends up getting a leather jacket, an old flight jacket because it's cold. He gets some anti-flare tank glasses because of the glow of the rod, and he gets a little star and a symbol and all this stuff. But it turns out his art is from tattoos. He's really a lover of tattoos. He's covered in tattoos. One of the ongoing jokes is that he has a rooster on his thigh, but he swears it's a phoenix. There's a running joke there, and you actually see Jack getting tattoos and stuff. But he's a lover of tattoo art and stuff like that. But one of the things his dad said, "Oh, you think you're going to just kind of, all right, are we still there? Okay." I had a little issue there with Google. But anyway, one of the things that he does while he's talking to his dad is tells him he's not going to go on patrols, he's not going to wear a costume and all this stuff. And his dad says, "You think you're going to be able to skirt by on this?" He goes, "What you don't understand about the superhero's life is that you don't go out and find the weirdness finds you." And so it does, and that's what's amazing about it. I always felt like that was life for me. I've actually sat on my couch and had weird stuff happen at the door. Oh, I'm getting a bad connection again. All right, there we go. Now, one of the things that gets me is the characters that was getting built up for it. Man, if that connection keeps going bad, I might have to do this later. Can you guys still hear me? Yeah. We start getting our cast of characters built up. At this carnival and things like that, we end up getting like this two-page spread of things that are coming. Okay, we've introduced Jack and his family, and the moat, tune, and all that stuff, and then all of a sudden, there's this two-page spread where we see from the one that I showed you a minute ago. He's actually like chained up somewhere. We actually see our Will Payton Starman from the '80s, where all these starmen are, and each one ends up getting their story about how they end up tying into the big starman story. But we start getting characters built up. We get Solomon Grundy coming in, and then you start noticing this face. There's an old hero named Ragdoll. I think that's what his name is. Cool, thank you, Sleepy. But you get Ragdoll, and you start noticing that people are wearing, you know, Raggedy Andy. You think they're just Raggedy Andy, but it's Ragdoll, an old. They're wearing his T-shirts and his face on them and stuff, and even Jack does wears it and stuff. And you start seeing some graffiti in the background, I think, and it turns out that what they're building up to. Yeah, we bring in Solomon Grundy. We get a friendly version of Solomon Grundy that ends up becoming Jack Knight's friend. For you guys that don't know Solomon Grundy will die over and over, and he always comes back a little bit different. He's always come back evil, sometimes evil smart, maybe sometimes Hulk-like. And all of a sudden, we get one that is very friendly, becomes a very close friend to Jack Knight. But this is where the tide got turned. All right, here. This is where I think it went direct sales because it says that and stuff, man. But James Robinson took this joke. His power, this villain's power, is that he could be triple jointed, and he was able to like bend his spine and all this stuff to where the Flash couldn't hit him even when he was in super speed because this guy could contort. He would fold himself up to rob a bank and to be put inside of like a little box that you didn't think a person could be in and stuff, right? Well, what he did is he turned him into a Charles Manson like cult leader, and he was taking over the city. And then all of a sudden we get this story from the past where we have our man, Green Lantern, and the Flash, and then Starman there, and they're talking about how the Ragdoll says, "This is different, guys. I know who you are. I have people in my cult have already figured out who you are. I know your secret identities. We're going to take out your family and stuff. And they're all sitting here trying to have some talk about how we want to deal with them. We're heroes and stuff. And Starman takes his cosmic rod and drops a damn bridge or a building or something on him. He's atheist. He's already lost his wife and all this stuff going on. He's the one that has nothing to lose. He's the one that's not going to be morally challenged because he's a scientist and stuff, man. And that really changed the whole tone of the series right there. This was an amazing story. Number 11. If you buy one Starman book, I say get this one. All right. So, as the story progresses and stuff, we get to know Jack. One of the things that amazed me is, as you've heard, a lot of the things that put these storylines in motion are women. He ends up meeting a girl named Sadie, and it was another slice of life there that I had to like step back on because he meets Sadie by bumping into her. At least this is how I remember it because this actually happened to me one time. But he bumped into Sadie seriously just by bumping into her, and she goes off on him. They end up going to dinner later, and he looks at Sadie and was finally like, "Look, we had a night on the town and stuff. Why did you get so mad that day?" Sadie tells him, "When you bumped into me, you reminded me of somebody that bumped into me 5 years ago and what she said and how he acted," and went off to this long tangent of how her memories were like dominoes. I've had that happen to me where I'm just sort of like, "So you weren't mad at me," is all I could say. And I got looked at and was told, "That's what you got out of that? That I'm not mad at you? I wasn't mad at you?" And I was like, "Yeah." So some of the storylines comes on there with sins of the child, and we start having Jack end up getting exposed to his dad's past. He starts meeting these characters and stuff that had to do with his dad. This has always been about his dad. His dad's kind of coming in, and Jack ends up having this, and this is where we have the storyline where I think this is where Nash, the Mist, ends up, drugging and raping him basically, and raising all kinds of hell. And we get Michael back, Michael Thomas, that Starman, and you start finding out that he was very Bowie inspired. Okay, I mean, really Bowie inspired. Don't think a girl's named Sadie. That's funny. Yeah, her. Yeah. So, but Sadie ends up being Will Payton Starman, the one from the '80s. That's his sister, and at the end of Starman's '80s series or whatever it was, he ends up going off into space. I have a few issues that were actually pretty good where Lobo popped up, and Peter David and Keith Giffen did like this one shot funny story that tied it, the whole other thing. But anyway, we have all hell getting broke loose, man. But we end up having Michael and Solomon Grundy blown up in a building in a way, and we actually get to start knowing this one. We get Michael's talking about being an alien, and he's bisexual. And somebody brings up to him that didn't you have like a girlfriend, an Earth girlfriend back in the day, and now you have a boyfriend? And he's like, "Well, I'm an alien. You can't really judge my sexuality by human standards and stuff." And Michael has become one of the most beloved characters out of this series for people that read it. James Robinson ended up putting him in Justice League right before the 52 took off. Started bringing him out. Very 70s and David Bowie inspired character. So I instantly like was hooked. I'm like, I love this. We got Iggy Stardust. This is when I read this, I read it was Stardust. It was David Bowie's character and stuff. Man, maybe a little touch of the thin. Yeah. Anyway, the Berlin albums is what I would listen to. Oh, here we go. And here's Charity. Here's a picture of Charity. You know. But like I said, we get in there and we get another times past story. You going in there. And here's we had little subplots in there to keep this going because it is a sequential art comic book that has to have cliffhangers and stuff. Oh, what a day! We want to get out. We're supposed to get like up to like 6 inches of snow. The White Duke. Thank you, D. Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you. I started thinking Venture Brothers and I got it all messed up in my head. I'm shooting from the hip here, right? But here we go. Talking with David, 1996. And this is what gives you the idea that this happens in real time. They will date these things. So we get subplots in there, just characters. Then I got all excited, man, cause Miss Sandman had taken off. Yeah, thanks, D. I appreciate that, man. Yeah, a huge Bowie fan. And we end up getting a little tale here of the mist. The mist. Let's reset here. Okay, we get a tale from the Sandman. Neil Gaiman's Sandman had come on. We ended up getting Matt Wagner and some people doing a Vertigo book of Sandman Mystery Theater, and we get a Sandman story. We get Sandman popped up. This was, I think, Sand and Stars, and you could actually go back And this is where you start finding out that Jack has this love of the heroes of the golden age of the past. You know, he loves those heroes from World War II and all that stuff like that. And we get an yeah. Always was confused about the comic when seeing it in passing in the '90s, where it's set in relation to other DC comics, as it looked like a Vertigo tile. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it pretty was. I can get into that later, you know. But if you're talking about Starman, James Robinson has always had an agreement that they cannot use these characters without asking him first, which is why there's been very few Jack Knight appearances or mentioned and stuff. Usually it's like a little cameo. I think in Identity Crisis #1, he's like at the funeral, sitting beside a Sadie of Sue Dibny's funeral. You'll get something like that. But anyway, yeah, Starman. Yeah, yeah. It was James Robinson's own little corner of the universe there, if you will. You know, I don't know how he got that deal, but it's probably because this thing had a cult following. You know, but anyway, so that's why I mean we get to know these things. You know, and actually Sandman Mystery Theater had a 4-part story called The Mist that you could go back to and read that may have tied into this a little bit, but it wasn't. Besides the time past stories, there was also a few stories that focused on the Shade. I remember a story where the Shade and Bobo Benetti stop a crime together. Yep, yep. Hopefully, I'll get to that here in a minute. I'm just kind of going down the line here. Yeah, Paulo is a Starman fan. I love that. Thank you, Paulo. But yeah, we get some great these covers themselves, right? And then it was right here that I actually kind of started predicting what was going to go on with Starman, right? Now, the Demon's Quest, there is a poster, an old movie poster or something from the 30s that that he had, that Jack Knight had in his antique shop, and 2 or 3 people got sucked inside of it. And what happened is they went to hell, a form, a version of hell, Demon's Quest. And all of a sudden, because of a woman, more or less, the Mist daughter, Nash became the Mist, the one that raped him and he drugged him and had his kid, said they were the same side of the same coin, two different sides of the same coin. So he was starting to go out to prove that he actually was not, you know, in any way connected to her like that. So he ends up going to hell to try to save some strangers, and this is where we get really finally get into the Shade. We had some of the Shade's journals in the background that you could read and things like that. But with this series, I started noticing something, and I still do it. We also ended up finding that there's a set of cops called the O'Dares. They're a bunch of Irish cops and stuff like that. There's a sister and some brothers and stuff like that. But you start getting the idea that there's reincarnation going on in this, right? I appreciate everybody sticking around, but I started noticing that I was beginning to wonder if we had the same formula of Alan Moore's Swamp Thing going on with Starman, right? We had the story where everything is different, but it's the same. You know, we get revealed all this stuff. Then we get some world building, and then Jack Knight's getting there, and there's a legacy going on because there's been Parliament of Trees brought in other Swamp Things and things like that. And then Swamp Thing ended up going to hell, and then he ends up fighting some horror stuff, and then he goes off into space, and I think it paid off. It's almost like there are parallels with Alan Moore's Swamp Thing story setting wise, as there is with Starman, which I think is pretty cool. And then we have the issue, A Times Past, just for Michael Starman, where we go to the '70s, man. And I swear, when you read this, and even though it's at a disco, I'm telling you, man, and we're back. So apparently something happened where I don't know what this is back in the late '90s, you know. So I in the number 29 as a jumping point on for everybody in 1997. And this thing was advertised and everywhere, and this was a jumping on point for people. So I don't know if sales went up. I don't know if DC was loving it. I don't know why. But this number 29 is where they were like pushing the book finally. And we end up getting our pirate story that pays off. Okay. And unfortunately, Solomon Grundy died, and we get this fantastic story where Jack Knight goes back hey guys, where Jack Knight goes back, you start finding out that Jack Knight has loyalty to his friends and his close friends, and that's another thing that messed with me. Right, this was that same attitude I had, you know, back in my younger days and stuff, and I still do. I still do with my friends. But we end up going back to where Solomon Grundy has died. Jack Knight knows that every time Solomon Grundy is reborn, he's different, but he wants to save the nice, friendly Solomon Grundy he became close to. And we have a very cool story where it was like comic book fans talking, where we end up getting Batman popping up because it is Solomon Grundy in Gotham, and we get the new continuity where Green Lantern, Golden Age Green Lantern, protected Gotham when there was no Batman. But he's called Sentinel now, and you start seeing how Jack Knight has this huge respect for Green Lantern, but he cannot stand what Batman represents. And there's this, he gets right in Batman's face, and tells him everything that he represents about wrong with what heroes are, and how that man over there should have more respect than anybody, and by God, he should be called Green Lantern and all this stuff, right? So this is where you start getting more and more into knowing Jack Knight. The respect for the stuff that came first, the original stuff. He prefers, despite wearing black himself and having black tattoos, he really likes colors and what the heroes represented. They acted more like heroes, not people that hid in shadows and stuff like that. So, he doesn't like hypocrisy, is what it comes down to. It went from being heroes to vigilantism. I mean, it's one of the things you read and you can talk and talk and talk. So all of a sudden, he ends up still trying to prove that he's not, the same as the Mist and all this stuff. So he ends up like helping to prove Bullet Man, one of his dad's friends, his innocence and stuff. He ends up getting more and more involved into this hero stuff. It starts crossing over with Shazam and everything like that. He's getting a little bit closer with his dad. Sorry, guys. And then we get into times past with Starman. The Will Payton Starman. What's going on with him? And finally we see his son. This is where he finds out he has a son. And this is the issue that I think somebody was talking about. It's issue number 38, where the Nash comes in and wipes out Justice League Europe. And some of these characters have popped back up, but she ends up killing Crimson. She ends up killing almost half, if not all, of the team. I don't want to ruin it for you, man, but this was one of the most talked about comics in comic book shops for like 6 months after it came out, with my memory. It was like, why does nobody know about this? This was when everybody was like, why is nobody talking about this book? The people who read their comics and would hear about this would go over there and pick it up and read it, and they were blown away by what happened in here. Like, they did it. This was like the event that was a non-event that nobody talked about. Why didn't they do it? I mean, some characters get messed up in this, and it was like poetry the way he wrote it. You know. And I could go on with the Odares and another, times past where we bring in the demon and things like that. But then you have to go out and get the mist. Now, one of the things I was talking about a minute ago was the fact that I think it had something to do. I don't know if James Robinson did it on purpose or not, but Jack Knight's mother has died. He's rebelled against his father. As you read these one shots that come out, these 80-page giants and stuff, you get to see glimpses of Jack's past, glimpses of Jack just having talks with his tattoo artist. And it was just some amazing stuff that was well thought out. You see glimpses of Jack Knight playing with David. He's starting to remember the good times instead of holding on to all the bad times. But he remembers having the towel clipped around him by his mom while she's hanging laundry and stuff. And he's chasing his brother playing Starman. You start finding out he did look up to his dad. He wanted to be a hero like his dad when he was a kid. He's had something happen to where his body's been like regenerated. He has no more tattoos. So he he actually ends up a tattoo that Tony Harris actually has. He ends up getting a tattoo that has his father's initials in it, putting it on his back. And while he's getting it put on his back, the tattoo artist is talking about his dad, saying, "Well, why'd your dad become, Starman? Usually doesn't something tragic happen to these heroes, or don't they get some kind of calling?" And he comes to the conclusion that his dad really is a real hero because he just did it because it was right. He didn't have anything, tragic happen to him. And then I've had something. There was a story in here that I always kind of wondered, did Jack know it or not? I don't think I might need to reread it. Maybe I missed something, but I never knew if they found out or not. But Starman, the original Starman, it's such a great series. I picked up the three Starman omnibuses at Ollie's sale. Yeah, man. And Chris, look out. There's four of them. There's four of them. Two hardback, two softback. But one of the things that happened in one of these stories, which was fantastic, it was a great story, is that there actually is an old Brave and the Bold from the Silver Age where you had Starman and Black Canary team up. I don't know how often they teamed up, but in the story that James Robinson touched out, they were missing 3 and 5 around here. Number 3 and 5. They have 4 of the 6, but 3 and 5 are missing around here. But anyway, one of the things they touched on is that you saw Starman, original Starman and Black Canary, beating up some crooks. I think she was a witch or something. I don't know. There's a prairie witch in here that's a running character in here or something. I can't remember her name. But anyway, but what happened was that they started talking about infidelity and how Black Canary's original husband, like it was in the comic, was an investigator, and that's how they start talking about it. He's hired to catch people cheating a whole lot, and they end up in a hotel room, and they're being real smug about people being dumb enough to get caught. And when they walk out, there's a cop or a photographer or somebody that's caught them. And I always wondered if some of Jack's resentment for his father came from that affair with the Black Canary. I just there's a story about how it got covered up that's very interesting and stuff, right? Very film noir and stuff. But anyway, a lot of things that Jack does is because of women. The fortune teller kind of gives him a little lead there. He does some stuff because the mist ends up, telling him that we're just alike and I'm making your baby grow up to hate you. And then he decides he's going to go off to the stars and stuff because of Sadie finally telling him that this is my brother. Can you go find him? So basically, we get a few issues of it's Grant Morrison's JLA, but he ends up getting a ship, and it's very 50 style, very retro, very much like Jackalikes and stuff, right? And we end up using the cosmic energy from his father because his father's been using science and stuff like that to better mankind. And then you start, and then it just dawns on you almost all of the thanks to Starman from the 40s, the 30s and 40s, having this cosmic power energy that he pulled from the stars, you start figuring out that this is why we can have the Legion of Superheroes. Their technology, their force belts, their ability to travel through space, and all this stuff like that is going to end up coming from Starman. And this is when he was a player. And this is where Jack sort of starts getting, he goes off into space and stuff, right? And you start getting the idea that this is an important character. James Robinson is taking everything that's there and saying, "Here's why this happened, and it was because of Starman, and this is where that technology came from. This is what made that possible." So then, with the legacy stuff going on, we turn around and we get a Starman 1 million during Grant Morrison's 1 million, and Jack and his dad are talking like, "Wow, I can't believe we had a legacy that far." And they kind of go over the legacy a little bit, but nobody remembers Jack Knight. And his dad Ted is like, "Well, don't tell him that." But it turns out that this was a traitor. This was a traitor to the Justice League, all because of that one little gene, that one little thing where the mist, Nash, the mist, the bad guy, the bad girl, whatever, is there. That one little piece of evil floating down the lineage and stuff, came out. Is what they get into it. Very cool story. Robinson did a really cool twist on it. And then we come back to another time's past that you don't really think too much about. It takes place in 1954. We learn there's a Starman of 1951 that nobody knows who that was. So just to kind of speed through here, some great stuff happens. Jack ends up hanging out in space, and I can't remember who went with him, but he ends up having his father's consciousness copied into a mother box that the league gave him. Orion was part of the league, and they gave him a mother's box. So now he has his father there, and he's stuck in space traveling, forced to spend time with his father. Now that just seemed like to have Jack somebody to talk to, or keep the story going. But Jack is now forced to spend time with his dad, and this is where Jack start changing and stuff. And we have some great space tales, and all this stuff. Love this stuff, right? But then all of a sudden we get the Starman lineage to be even more important. This book right here, number 51. This is one of the books that I would use to push on people because Starman is not only traveling through space and time and all this stuff. There's all sorts of things going on, but he ends up landing on Krypton when Jor-El is a teen. And he figures out he knows who Jor-El is and starts seeing that Jor-El has problems with his father. And now we're talking about a son. And it's because of Jack Knight explaining that you can talk mathematically through binary to everybody, that he's able to tell him the coordinates to Earth. So it's because of Jack Knight that Jor-El knew about Earth and how to find Earth to send his son there to become Superman. Great stuff. He gets sidetracked with trying to find, trying to find Will Payton Starman. He ends up hanging out with Adam Strange, and some wars and stuff like that. Then we start seeing things going on back home. He even meets Space Cabbie. He's traveling around with Michael there. But we start seeing stuff like Opal City now has Phantom Lady coming in, and Black Condor, and Elongated Man. All these heroes are kind of coming in. So Jack Knight equals Forrest Gump meets everybody. Um, I think it's more like Big Lebowski. He's just kind of he's being himself, but he's traveling through worlds. He's like a Raymond Chandler novel. Yeah, I wouldn't say Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump actually influenced more history than what the that's going on. So basically, just not I could go side by side, but we end up getting Alex Ross covers that connect. We get 6 connecting covers with all the Starmen, and in the middle of all that, we start getting the idea that the Legion of Superheroes Starman is going to pop up. And then it happens. Starman's coming back to Earth. Some things have happened. And from issue 62 to 73, we get everything comes home to a certain extent in Grand Quignal. I don't know if that's Latin or what that is, right? But this little demon beast, this little dwarf that has the same powers as Shade pops up. Love connecting covers, not sure why, because they're cool. Yeah, yeah. But they get in here and all these villains pop up, and there's like this freaking street war going on in Opal City, and Jack Knight's coming back, and it's the final showdown between the original Mist and the original Starman on top of a building. And just go ahead and tell you, the original Starman dies. Jack Knight has come to peace with his dad. He got to spend all that time with his conscience. Oh, well, thank you, Paulo. It's French. It was a theater in Paris talking about Grand Quignal. Very cool, man. But I mean, it gets evil. There's demons, and now we have like Irish cops, the O'Dares coming in, and all these C and D list heroes that are just freaking cool coming in, and Starman coming in, and then the original Starman dies on top of a building with the original Mist, and to save the city, he ends up I think lifting a whole. I think a building had a bomb in it, and he just ends up putting a cosmic bubble. I'm shooting from the hip here, man. It's all the whole freaking stories in my head. This is cool. The Grand Quignal was originally these Italian puppet shows in late Middle Ages. Come on. Okay, it'll come back in a minute. Let me see. There we go. Italian shows in late Middle Ages filled with horrors and violence. Everything you shouldn't do. Morality plays as my understanding. Nice. And that kind of fits into this. So, I mean, it's got just so much stuff happens and it's fantastic. But anyway, we see Jack Knight watching his dad sacrifice himself with the Mist, his arch enemy, the original Mist, and dies. And then we end up having a funeral where Jack finally comes out and everybody comes in there and says their piece at the funeral. You can imagine all the people at the funeral for a Golden Age superhero. And Jack Knight comes up and pretty much ends what he has to say was, Dad would want me to thank everyone for being here. He was polite that way. Now that seems kind of like not much when you're reading it, but after you've been on this journey with Jack and this whole theme of fathers and sons and stuff. Hey, did everything work out on your books with your shelves? Nah, they're gone. They're gone. I'll get some shelves later. But after being on this journey with him and things like that, by the time he made peace with his dad and about his dad right before his dad died, it was almost like this is what was meant to be for these two to get together. And it kind of ends with Superman talking to Jack and Jack getting to tell him he met Jor-El, I think. So this was a very interesting. Yeah, so this was a very, very interesting little story here, that we're dealing with stuff, right? And then we get to have a times past. This is how I knew James Robinson had this whole series laid out. Because not only does his dead brother come back, but looks like he might. But does he? Does he get to talk to his dad one more time? Does he? We don't know. And then, we start wrapping up things and we get to see who was the Starman of 1951. We get a time travel story. And there is something kind of important in there, if you will. We get to see Jack kind of wind down. And it ends amazingly. We have our first issue where Jack is really the reluctant hero, doesn't get along with his dad. He's done his whole thing his entire life and things like that. And it ends up him running off with Sadie to San Francisco to be a father himself, and he retires. And who does he pass the legacy on? Who does he give the cosmic rod to? Well, that was laid out years before when James Robinson came on Stars and Stripes number zero. Or was this years before? Well, 1999. But anyway, he comes out there and we have a story here with Starman in it. And basically, what happens is she has a portion of Starman's she has a piece of her dad of Starman's. I'm getting tired. Long story short, there's a character Stars and Stripes, and the original one ended up becoming Airman because Starman gave him a gravity belt. There's a whole story there, so there's a tie there to the Starman legacy. But we end up getting a story in the past of how we see Jack really trying to hustle some stuff and how he and his dad are getting into it, and we get to see Jack in a flashback of how he was and how his dad got along. And that's part of the journey, man, is getting to know those characters and stuff, right? Okay, guys, that's 51 minutes. I don't know if I've gotten anywhere with anything, and I know I've left a bunch of stuff out, but I'm tired now. So, and I've actually got some work to do, especially on these shelves, man. So who's out there? Anybody got any questions? Any Starman questions? Anything like that? Tat was wondering about the shelves. I've done nothing with the shelves. I'm actually going to box up some comics. Thanks for the retrospective. I always wanted to get into this version of Starman, but my funds were limited back then. I was really into the books of magic at the time, and I hate Harry Potter. That's what I'm trying to say. There's a lot of people. The '90s are amazing to me because I was there. You know what I mean? There was a lot of garbage coming out, but there's also a lot of great stuff hidden in there. And I love how over time, the cream has rose to the top. Oh, thanks, Tat. I'm glad you were able to pop in there, man. I'm glad, man. But yeah, anytime, Tat. Give me a yell offline too sometime. But yeah, the '90s and stuff like that. Book Neil Gaiman, Sandman, anything that Neil Gaiman was touching back there. Is Courtney Whitmore still in the DC limbo? Um, I don't know. I didn't know she ever went into limbo. She was in Jeff John. Jeff Johns will not let her go into. Courtney Whitmore is Stars and is Stargirl, right? But anyway, Stargirl, Courtney Whitmore, if I'm talking about the right character here, is basically based on Jeff Johns' sister. She'll never go into limbo. Jeff Johns' sister, and he actually wrote a story in Justice Society when it was JSA about a plane wreck, but a plane crash. But his sister died in a plane crash, and he brought her into comics as Stargirl, or whatever, Star Spangled Kid, Stargirl, Star Woman, whatever she's calling herself. So she'll never go into limbo because that's the way he immortalized his sister. That's a very personal character for him. He actually had a story in JSA where I found it. At the time, I was really going back and forth with it because I knew what he was doing. But I think it was Nuclon, who was the new Adam, had a chance to switch one of his family members with a villain on a plane that was about to crash, or maybe a girlfriend or something. Have the JSA been used since Flashpoint? Um, they've had cameos here and there of them on a big comeback. Everybody's kind of predicting the JSA, and I think they did announce it that the JSA is coming back. You've already seen shades of it over the little hints here over the last 2 years, but everybody's waiting for JSA and Legion to come back big time. Hey, Count, what's going on? Just answering some questions, guys. Pond Adidas is here. Man, this thing is taking off now, man. Well, I've talked about Starman for 50 minutes. Everybody's popping in. I'll take some questions, guys, if you've got any. If not, I'll probably get off here in about 5 minutes or something like that. I hate when people show up right when I'm done. Yeah, that story with Nuclon explains who Stargirl is in the letters page of that issue. Yeah, Chris Wojnak is right. I think that's his name, is right on it. But so yeah, as far as like I said, that's a character based on Jeff Johns's sister who passed away, and I don't ever see her being put into limbo or anything. So I can just imagine like Jeff Johns how he feels when he sees her like pop up in the Bruce Timm universe when they did a Seven Soldiers of Victory cartoon and stuff like that. Oh man. Well, guys, I appreciate everybody popping in. The numbers are going up and down. People are leaving and coming. So maybe next time I'll do a Justice Society live hangout sometime if y'all want me to talk about that. That started out with James Robinson bringing in Starman, Dave Goyer, and then around issue 6, Jeff Johns came in. That's yeah, sorry. That's why Count Von Strange says, "Damn, I missed the entire hangout." Yeah, I'll do JSA next, Chris. I appreciate it, man. Yeah, yeah, I'll do it next. Yeah, I'll pull out a few issues. I don't know if I can do the whole series at once, but yeah, yeah, I'll do JSA. I'll do that run of JSA. But anyway, for the people who just popped in here, man, that's why you got to hit the bell. Hit that bell down there. So, because I do these at random, I try to do them on the same days, but I just never know what time. So, like, sub, subscribe, and do it. Oh, thanks, man. Thanks, Sleepy. Appreciate it, man. Uh, I, I just shot this off the hip. I just pulled out the books and I went by memory and just want to get this off my chest because I started out telling everybody, thanks, Tat. Appreciate it, man. But I started out this whole hangout because people have started picking up these trades, these omnibuses, and they started asking me, all right, Count Von Strange has hit the bell, so be like Von Strange and hit the bell. But I just went ahead and did this because people have been grabbing these omnibuy, omnibuses at Ollie's super cheap and stuff. And then I've had some friends, start picking up the Starman line. They always ask why I don't talk about it too much. It's because when I read this, my friend, I've said it many times through this, man, it was really eerie how Jack Knight and I were a lot alike. Contrary, he grew up kind of against the grain a little bit. Just, oh, there's so many things. And there's a couple of slice of life moments in his series that I just sort of like, wow. Yeah, I can't find Starman 3 hardcover for good price. That's Pawn Adidas. 3 and 5 seem to be the ones that are hard to get, but I haven't been really digging for them. I'm assuming they're out of print might be the problem. But the single issues, I get it off. I found these for like, I think $5 a piece or something. So yeah, I had to get them. Always enjoy your insights, buddy. Fun stuff usual. Thanks, Dr. Silver Age. Appreciate it, man. I was actually telling somebody about your channel yesterday, just to give you a heads up there. So if you get a few subscribers, maybe hope that's where they came from. All right, guys. Well, I'll have to remember the next one I said I'll do is the JSA, and I love that. I love that series. That was such a good series. Issue number 10, where Wildcat takes on half the Injustice Society or something while he's and got. There's an issue 10. Hey, thanks, man. Yeah, there's an issue of JSA that I love that's issue 10. It has an Alan Davis cover of a close up of Wildcat, Ted Grant, ex boxer, the guy who's actually helped train Batman and Black Canary and some of them fighting. Where he's kind of like all beat up and stuff. And the book opens up with him in a bathtub, a broke arm, and everybody's left the JSA headquarters. Take a nap first. It's going to be a long one. Yeah. And I love it because like Johnny Sorrow and Icicle and all these guys come in, a bunch of villains. I want to say they're the Injustice Society, but they come in and they're storming the JSA headquarters, and he's by himself, naked, with a broke arm. And he's talking about how like he's been doing this for over 60 years, crime fighting for over 60 years. And the way he takes them out is so just just I mean it just glides. He just glides through there, man. It's so graceful. And he makes it look so easy. So it's a high point. It's a well told story. It's a high point of the series. All right, guys, we're at 58 minutes. I can't believe you guys are hanging in there listening to this, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So, yeah, I think I'm going to get out of here. I hate getting out of here with everybody hanging out and starting to talk, man, but I'm dry, man. My voice is dry, and I'm trying to keep from starting on with the GSA. All right, Tats Comics might go live in a bit, so check him out. Well, that's a good place to leave it, man. Yeah, go check out Tats Comics. Check out everybody in the chat. The way later, Hal, I'll try to catch you the entire show next time. Appreciate it, man. All right, yeah, later there, Chris. Appreciate you coming by, man. But for anybody that's catching this up on the reload, I've got the settings set now. YouTube, it worked on the last one, but you can actually see the chat as it happens, like you were here live. Somebody actually messaged me and didn't realize that it was already uploaded from before. They thought they were watching me live. Okay. Later, guys. Have a good one.